You think you know what a knight is? Forget everything you've heard in songs and seen in fairy tales. There are no shining suits of armor here, no beautiful ladies, no heroic deeds done for glory. Here there's only a cold morning, old caked in dirt, aching joints, and the fear of dying nameless. This isn't a story of glory. It's a slow, agonizing march along the thin line between honor and survival. Welcome to real medieval life, harsh, filthy, and merciless. Are you ready to find out who you would really be if, instead of a fairy tale, you landed in reality? But before you get comfortable, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now, make yourself comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake to the sound of bells ringing, but it's not the gentle morning chime you might have hoped for. No, this is the harsh, insistent clang of metal against metal, a sound that tells you it's time to rise and face yet another day. There's no warmth here, no soft sheets or delicate perfumes. The cold stone of your chamber greets you like an old, unfeeling friend. And as the bells toll, you know it's time to prepare yourself for the day ahead. The room is dim, a flickering candle barely enough to cut through the early morning darkness. You stretch, but the stiffness in your body tells you the night offered no real rest. You had dreams, perhaps of battles won or of faraway lands where life was easier, but now those dreams are already fading. It's another day in the endless cycle of your existence. And that cycle, it begins, as always, with the armor. As you rise from your small cot, you're already hearing the frantic footsteps of your squire, young, eager, but nervous. He's probably already begun preparing your armor, though you know that half of the work will be left to you. It's never easy, this process. The metal is heavy, the leather stiff, and the padding, though necessary, always feels like a prison. But this is what defines you. This is what you are, a knight, or at least that's what they tell you to believe. You get dressed, each piece of armor an overwhelming weight on your body. Your chainmail, then the plate armor, and the layers of padding that make you feel as if you're encased in a prison of iron. The weight pulls at your shoulders and neck, and even your legs feel sluggish under the heavy load. But none of that matters. You know you must endure. You know this is the life you've chosen, whether by your own will or by the hand of fate. It's hard to say. The squire finishes adjusting the last piece of your gauntlet, his hands trembling slightly as he pulls the leather straps tight. You grunt in acknowledgement, though your mind is already elsewhere. The sound of the bells still echoes in your ears, signaling that time is slipping away. You can't waste a second. There's always something to be done, always another person to impress, another enemy to face, or another task to complete. And yet, despite the chaos of your existence, there's a certain rhythm to the life of a knight. You might not like it, you might not have chosen it, but it's there. You can't escape it. It's like the weight of your armor, unrelenting, impossible to ignore, and strangely familiar. You step into the courtyard, the cold air biting at your face, and immediately you feel the weight of the world pressing down on you again. There's no time for rest, no time for reprieve. The day is just beginning, and already you can hear the clamor of the others preparing for the tasks ahead. It's an endless cacophony of swords clashing, horses neighing, and the constant hum of voices. And you are a part of that, but for a brief moment, as you stand there in the cold morning light, you wonder, is this really the life you've chosen? Or have you simply been swept into this tide of endless violence and duty without ever truly deciding? The question lingers, but before you can dwell on it, a familiar figure steps into view, a fellow knight, already mounted on his horse, ready for the day's duties. Ready, my lord? He asks, his voice tinged with that strange blend of respect and expectation that all knights share for one another. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak, and climb onto your own horse. The weight of your armor feels even more unbearable now, but you push forward. The day must begin, whether you're ready or not. Steel, you taste it in the back of your throat before you even feel its chill on your skin. That taste, iron, rust, the residue of endless years of battle, follows you everywhere. It settles in your mouth, in your memory, in the damp corners of your chamber where your weapons are stacked with care, or perhaps with resignation. Today, like every day, you face your closest companion and your greatest adversary, your weaponry. You stagger, heavy with armor, into the armory. It is not the majestic hall of legends, lined with banners and polished blades. No, this is a small, crowded stone room, smelling of oil, sweat, and something darker that you would rather not identify. The floors are perpetually slick, the corners home to cobwebs, and the scattered bones of long dead rats. Light barely filters in, but you know this place by heart. You do not need light to find your sword. Your squire scurries behind you, breathless, clutching a rag and a flask of lamp oil. He is eager to please, but you know better than to expect excellence. You have seen too many squires become corpses on the field, too many hopeful faces turn pale and empty. You take your sword from its stand, feeling the familiar roughness of the hilt beneath your glove. This blade, chipped and battered, bears witness to more than a decade of violence. The stories it could tell, if only steel had a voice. You begin your morning ritual, cleaning, sharpening, oiling. The squire attempts to help, but you see the fear in his eyes as he wipes a dagger that is older than his parents. Your hands, calloused and marked with half-healed scars, work automatically. You listen to the scrape of the whetstone, the clink of buckles, the soft metallic sigh as you slide the blade back into its scabbard. Your sword is heavy, not only in weight, but in the responsibility it carries. It is the line between life and death, between victory and disgrace. Without it, you are nothing, yet, as you adjust your sword belt, you cannot ignore another truth. This weapon is not just your shield, it is your burden. Every wound it has inflicted, Every life it has ended has taken a toll on you as well. You remember the trembling hands of defeated enemies, the pleading eyes of fallen squires. Their ghosts follow you, no matter how many times you clean your blade. The blood never quite washes off. The armory is not silent. All around you, other knights perform the same grim dance, inspecting axes, testing the weight of maces, buckling on daggers with hands that shake less from fear than from exhaustion. There are no songs here, no tales of glory. The only sounds are the clatters and sighs of men preparing for another day of survival. If you listen closely, you can hear the muttered curses, some against fate, others against lords, a few against their own bodies for not being as strong as yesterday. You step outside with your squire in tow, now burdened with your shield and lance. He stumbles, almost dropping the shield, and you suppress the urge to shout. What is the point? If he does not learn, the world will teach him soon enough. You were not born with patience, but you have learned it, slowly, painfully, as a matter of necessity. Patience is another weapon, one you wield more often than your sword. Outside, the morning is gray. Rain threatens the horizon, and the wind brings the scent of wet earth and distant fire. You watch your fellow knights saddle their horses, adjusting weapons that are more patched than polished. Every piece of armor bears scars, every blade a history of desperate violence. In this world, nothing is new. Even the youngest squire carries the weight of 100 years of bloodshed on his thin shoulders. You mount your horse, feeling the familiar resistance in your legs as the armor shifts and groans. The lance, awkward and unwieldy, sits in the crook of your arm, a reminder that battle is never far away. The sword at your side feels heavier still, as if it resists being drawn, as if it would rather remain silent and forgotten. You understand that feeling. Weapons are your only constant. Friends die, family disappears, and even your own body betrays you, growing slower and weaker with each year. But steel remains. It is loyal in its own cold, unfeeling way. It asks nothing but care, and in return, it offers you a chance, never a promise, at survival. You try to remember the first time you picked up a sword. You were barely more than a child, hands trembling, knuckles white with fear and excitement. That moment is lost now, buried beneath countless memories of violence. Now, the sword is simply an extension of your will, a necessity no more noble than a shovel or a plow. You do not wield it for honor or glory. You wield it because in this world, the alternative is death. Your squire tries to say something, a question perhaps about the tournament scheduled for later in the week. You grunt in response, not trusting yourself to speak kindly. There is no time for talk. There is only the endless preparation for the next conflict, the next task, the next chance to live or die by the steel in your hand. And so your day begins, as it always does, with the cold embrace of weapons, your truest friend and your most relentless enemy. You might imagine that as a knight, your day would begin with a grand feast, tables groaning under the weight of roasted meats, platters of fresh bread, and flagons of rich red wine. The reality, though, is nothing so picturesque. Your breakfast is a negotiation with your own stomach, a battle fought not with sword and shield, but with the stale and the barely edible. This is no banquet hall. This is survival, and breakfast is just the first skirmish of the day. The hall where you eat is cold, the stones sweating with last night's chill. Your breath steams in the air, proof that the fire, such as it is, has lost the war against the drafty walls. You take your place at the rough wooden table, surrounded by men who are your comrades in arms, your rivals, your potential killers. Each of them wears the same expression, grim resignation mixed with faint animal hope. Hope that today's bread will be less like stone, that the cheese will not reek quite so strongly of sour milk. Your squire shuffles forward with a wooden bowl, sloshing a watery porridge that's more gray than white. He offers you a heel of bread, so hard you could use it to hammer nails, and a slab of cheese that is either too young or 100 years too old, impossible to tell in the weak morning light. Meat is a rare visitor on the breakfast table, and when it does arrive, it is often so tough that you are left wondering whether the beast died of old age or simply lost the will to live. You chew the bread slowly, working your jaw as if you are gnawing through a piece of your own shield. Each bite is a chore, every swallow a triumph. The porridge is cold and flavorless, clinging to your spoon and your teeth like a memory you would rather forget. You are grateful, in a bitter sort of way, for the warmth it offers your insides, even as you know that it will sit in your stomach like a stone all morning. Across the table, another knight grimaces as he bites into a lump of cheese, eyes watering with the effort. You exchange a glance, one part camaraderie, one part shared suffering. There are no kings at this table, only survivors, each of you united by the common struggle to keep body and soul together for one more day. The talk is low and practical, news of the harvest, rumors of bandits, the ever present whisper of war. No one mentions glory or honor. Breakfast is too serious for that. The squire hovers, watching you with anxious eyes, as if the fate of his entire life depends on whether you finish your meal without complaint. You grunt, a sound that means it will do, which is about as high a compliment as breakfast receives in this place. The squire nods, relieved, and scurries away to fetch more water, or maybe to escape the stale stink of the hall. You look at your hands, thick fingered and scarred, nails rimmed with dirt that no amount of washing can ever seem to erase. You think, not for the first time, that a knight's hands are not made for dainty work. They are made for holding weapons, for breaking bread that could double as armor, for gripping reins slick with rain or blood. You flex your fingers, feeling the ache of old wounds, and return to the struggle with the bread. Occasionally there is a treat, an apple, small and bruised, or a few shriveled berries scavenged from last year's stores. These are rare, and more often the fruit is so sour it sets your teeth on edge. Still, you eat it because waste is an unforgivable sin. In the world you inhabit, every mouthful matters. Hunger is an enemy that never surrenders. You hear in the background the ceaseless noise of the kitchen, potboys and scullery maids arguing, the dull clank of pots, the muffled curses of the cook as another cauldron boils over. It is a symphony of fatigue, and you are its most dedicated listener. There is no leisure in this meal, no time to linger. The food is fuel, and you consume it with the urgency of a man who knows he may not have another chance until sunset. You clean your bowl with a piece of bread, scraping up every last smear of porridge. When you are done, you push your seat back and rise, stomach heavy, heart heavier. You do not linger at the table. There are always more pressing matters: armor to check, weapons to sharpen, duties to perform. But you cannot leave behind the taste of this morning. It clings to your mouth and your memory, a reminder that nothing in your life is easy, not even the simplest act of eating. And so, your day truly begins, not with the roar of battle or the fanfare of trumpets, but with the slow, grinding effort of choking down what passes for food. You are not a hero here, you are a survivor. And in every morning, you eat so that you may fight, and you fight so that perhaps tomorrow you will eat again. There is a lie told about nights, whispered in fireside stories, and sung in the ballads of bards who have never spent a day with mud between their toes. The lie is that a knight's life is a whirlwind of epic adventure, of galloping off to glorious battles, returning only to bask in admiration and sleep in comfort. You, unfortunately, know better. For you, preparation is not a moment of excitement or anticipation. It is the daily grind of anxiety and irritation, each morning's promise as dull and uncomfortable as the previous days. Breakfast hardly done, you are swept into the current of obligation. The day is a list of duties and chores, each more mundane than the last. Your squire is at your side, a shadow of nervous energy, asking a stream of questions that you answer mostly with grunts or silence. Which surcoat today, my lord? Should I saddle the bay or the roan? Do you wish your chainmail aired? You try to summon patience. After all, you once were a squire yourself, long ago, when the world seemed less heavy. But patience is a resource in short supply, like clean water or honest men. Your armor, already uncomfortable, must be checked yet again. The leather straps, swollen from yesterday's rain, are tight in some places and loose in others. Your mail shirt, despite your squire's best attempts, is still damp. It clings to your skin, as cold as a corpse. You bite back a curse as your squire fumbles with the buckles, his fingers trembling. He smells of last night's ashes and cheap soap. You wonder how much longer he will last in your service or in this world before the pressure grinds him down. Once, you dreamed of days filled with training and tournaments, your armor shining, your mind sharp, your spirit unbroken. Now you find yourself arguing with a steward about missing oats, and with a sergeant at arms about the reliability of men who are either too young or too old, too drunk or too hungry. Your lands, such as they are, provide little comfort. A small field, half drowned by rain, gives up grudging harvests. The peasants, your supposed subjects, eye you warily, as if you might demand from them their last crumb. You are, after all, just another mouth to feed in a world that offers little but mud and hardship. The steward reports a broken fence, sheep gone missing, and a band of outlaws sighted at the edge of your lands. He delivers his litany of disasters with the practiced misery of a man who knows that bad news will always outnumber good. You nod grimly, already calculating which problem is least likely to end in disaster. There are not enough hours in the day, nor enough men in your employ to solve every issue. You delegate, you hope, you pray, mostly to deaf ears. There are, of course, your peers to consider. Other knights, each one a blend of rival and ally, their greetings laced with double meanings. How fares your harvest, neighbor? One asks, knowing full well that your grain is as miserable as his own. You trade stories about a local tournament that might not even happen, given the state of the roads and the threat of banditry. Even in conversation, every word is a sword, and you measure your replies as you would in battle, cautiously, suspiciously, never giving too much away. As the morning drags on, the routines become a kind of torture. You check your horse's hooves, cracked, one of them likely to go lame. You inspect your weapons, again, as if they might have sprouted new nicks and cracks overnight. You listen to the sounds of the castle, the clatter of buckets, the shouting of servants, the distant wail of a baby whose mother cannot soothe it, perhaps because she herself has not eaten enough to produce milk. All around you is noise, confusion, the relentless pressure of expectation. You are not just a knight, you are a landlord, a judge, a reluctant father to a group of frightened, hungry peasants, and a would-be warlord when trouble comes. There is no glamour here. The poetry of chivalry is washed away in the rain that leaks through your roof, drowned in the muddy yard where your boots sink deeper every year. You consider sneaking away, just for an hour, a moment of peace in the woods, a breath of air that does not taste of fire and sweat. But even your escapes are interrupted. A page chasing you with a message from a neighbor, a servant needing a decision about which livestock to butcher, a merchant wanting you to mediate a dispute over half-rotten apples. The problems never pause, never grant you silence. If you are lucky, you might find a minute to relieve yourself behind the stables, alone but for the rats. It is nearly midday before you realize you have not yet truly begun your duties. The day stretches ahead, as gray and endless as the winter sky. Anxiety has become your most constant companion, the weight of responsibility settling on your shoulders alongside your armor. Annoyance bubbles just beneath the surface, ready to burst forth at the next foolish question or poorly timed request. You want to scream, or perhaps to laugh, but neither would change the facts of your existence. So you press on, day after day, through the mud, the noise, the arguments, and the endless chores. You are a knight, they say, but most days you feel like little more than a glorified beast of burden, one who wears steel instead of a yoke, but who is just as trapped, just as tired, and just as desperate for something better. The banners flap in the chill wind, a splash of faded color against a sky the color of wet wool. Someone is shouting orders in the muddy bailey, but the sound is muffled by the ceaseless clanging of iron and the stamp of hooves. Today, like so many days, you are reminded that your existence is defined not by peace or rest, but by a desperate and never ending pursuit. Status. You hear about the tournament before you even see it, the gossip carried in whispers through the halls, the servants and pages jabbering about who might win, who will disgrace themselves, who will ride away richer or limping. It is supposed to be a festival, a showcase of valor and skill, but for you, it is simply another test, another opportunity to fall behind or claw your way up. There is always someone younger, hungrier, more ruthless than you. In this world, your worth is measured by reputation and the sharpness of your sword, not by the stories you tell yourself as you lie awake at night. Your squire polishes your battered armor, scraping at old stains, rust, blood. You are never quite sure which is which anymore. The squire is hopeful. Perhaps he believes that glory is still possible, that victory might mean something, that a name can be made on the tilting field. You remember when you, too, believed. Now you know that every bruise, every broken bone is another notch in a long record of pain, a ledger that no one else will balance for you. Still, you participate because not to compete is to be forgotten. The tournament is less about honor and more about keeping your place in the hierarchy, a brutal, shifting pecking order in which weakness is never forgiven. You sign your name, knowing that every lord, lady, and hedge knight will be watching, judging, making quiet notes about your skill, your composure, the shine or dullness of your mail. In the lists, you survey the other knights. Their faces are familiar, though the lines deepen every year. Some wear new colors, the result of changed allegiances or desperate marriages. A few display fresh wounds, bruises the size of apples, a broken finger badly splinted, a black eye only half concealed by a visor. Everyone pretends not to notice. To acknowledge pain is to invite it closer. There is little nobility in the preparations. The stable reeks of manure and old sweat, horses restlessly shifting in cramped stalls. You spend more time tightening straps and arguing over the length of your lance than dreaming of chivalric triumph. Your squire chatters about the prize, a silver goblet, a purse of coins, a length of fine cloth, as if these things could change anything, as if they would feed your household through the next winter or keep the roof from sagging. You nod along because you remember what it is to hope. Eventually, you take your place at the edge of the field. The crowd is mostly peasants, their faces pinched by hunger, eager for spectacle that distracts them from their own miseries. Somewhere, a few bored ladies in wilted finery fan themselves with the air of those who have seen all this before and grown tired of it. The lord of the manor presides, bloated and red faced, his interest more in the betting than the sport. When your turn comes, you mount your horse, the weight of your armor pressing you into the saddle. You clutch the lance, feeling the old ache in your shoulder, and lower your visor. The world shrinks to a slit of gray sky and churned earth. You remember every fall you have ever taken, every time you have hit the ground hard enough to see stars, every moment when you thought perhaps this time you would not rise again. The signal is given. You ride, not for glory, but because you must. The impact is a thunderclap, wood against wood, iron against flesh, the world jolting sideways as you absorb the force. Sometimes you stay in the saddle, sometimes you fall, your armor turning you into a clumsy turtle flailing in the mud. The crowd gasps or laughs, but you do not care. Their memory is short. All that matters is that you get up, that you ride again. When it is over, win or lose, there is no triumph. There is only the next event, the next challenge, the next day to survive. You accept whatever token is offered, a limp handshake, a greasy cup of ale, a handful of coins you suspect are counterfeit. The pain in your ribs is as real as the hunger in your gut. But you endure because to stop is to disappear. You notice later that someone has painted your name on a board, recording the winners and losers for posterity. The paint runs in the rain. You wonder how long your name will last before it is washed away, replaced by someone else's. The pursuit of status is endless. You run, you fight, you bleed, and in the end, all you win is the chance to do it again tomorrow. At some point, usually when you are tending to a bruise the size of a fist, or scraping muck off your boots with a stick that barely holds together, you remember why you ever wanted to be a knight in the first place. Stories told by firelight, mothers whispering of chivalry and honor, fathers boasting about deeds in distant wars, poets singing of loyalty, bravery, the eternal gleam of glory. Those dreams felt real once, as if honor was a cloak you could wrap around your shoulders to keep out the cold. But the truth, as you know far too well, is that honor is a luxury for the lucky, the naive, or the already dead. Even the word itself, honor, sounds hollow some days, like something you read once in a book before you learned to count the cost of a night spent without sleep. You would laugh if you thought your cracked lips could manage it. Most days, the closest you come to honor is not kicking your squire for dropping your shield, or not stealing your neighbor's sheep when no one is looking. The world demands you be ruthless. If you are not, someone else will be, at your expense. Take, for example, your most recent foray into diplomacy. The lord of a neighboring manor comes to visit, his retinue trailing behind him like the world's most miserable parade. His armor is clean, his boots are polished, and his words are as slick as his hair. He speaks of alliances, of justice, of shared enemies, but you hear only the underlying threat. He wants your land or your loyalty, or at the very least, to be sure you are not planning to steal his dwindling supply of pigs. You pour him sour wine and let him talk, knowing full well that one day you may meet him across a battlefield, and the only honor left will be found in the mud between your teeth. The servants whisper that you should treat such guests with respect. He is, after all, a knight as well. But you have seen enough of knights to know what lies behind their polite smiles and flowery speeches. In private, they are just as desperate, just as frightened, just as likely to curse their fate and cheat at dice. If honor is what divides you from the rest, it is a very thin line indeed. You have been to tournaments where knights have sabotaged each other's saddles, greased the footrests, bribed the judges, and spat in the communal wine jug. You have ridden beside honorable men who, in the dead of night, would slit a sleeping enemy's throat for a handful of silver or the promise of a rumor. On campaign, you have watched as starving men pillaged churches, burned villages, and took whatever they could carry, always, of course, under the banner of some sacred cause. Once, in a moment of foolishness, you tried to live by the code you were taught as a child. You spared a defeated opponent in battle, letting him limp away with nothing but his pride. Months later, that same knight led a raid on your lands, burning your fields and laughing as your peasants starved. Lesson learned. Mercy is just another word for weakness. Now you keep your dreams of honor to yourself. When a young squire asks you about chivalry, you offer a shrug and tell him to keep his sword sharp and his purse hidden. When the local priest urges you to remember your vows, you nod and try not to roll your eyes. You kneel at the chapel, but your prayers are for good weather, strong horses, and a shield that does not splinter at the first blow. God, if he listens, has never sent you a straight answer. It is not all filth and fury, of course. Sometimes, late at night, you remember the feeling of a clean victory, the rare moments when you did something good, protected a widow from a greedy bailiff, gave a coin to a beggar, kept your word when no one else would. Those memories are small, almost invisible, but you hold on to them like a secret stash of bread in a time of famine. They do not make you a hero. They only remind you that once you thought being a knight meant something more. But reality intrudes always. You are called away to settle a dispute over a stolen chicken, to discipline a squire caught sleeping on guard, to negotiate with a merchant who swears your men owe him money for boots that fell apart within a week. Every day, more mud on your boots, more blood on your hands, more weight on your soul. The dream of honor flickers, almost goes out, then burns on, faint and stubborn, like the embers in your cold hearth. You still tell yourself stories sometimes. You imagine that after one last battle, one last tournament, you will have earned your rest. You will hang your sword on the wall, your name will be sung in the halls, and your soul will be clean again. But even as you dream, you know the truth. The only thing waiting for you at the end of this life is more dirt, more pain, and a name that will fade faster than the blood dries on your blade. Honor, you realize, is not the prize at the end of the road. It is the road itself, trudged day after day through mud and disappointment, with no guarantee that anyone will remember you walked it at all. In the stories, the training of a knight is a montage of gallant scenes, swordplay under the sun, jousts cheered on by ladies in towers, feasts after victory, and wisdom dispensed by grizzled old warriors. In reality, training is pain. It is monotony. It is the same gravelly yard, day after day, year after year. It is sweat soaking through a padded gambeson, blood oozing from burst blisters, and muscles that ache before dawn and keep aching long after dusk. You step onto the training field, already regretting it, but also knowing that the only thing worse than training is what happens to a knight who does not. Your squire is there before you, dragging wooden targets into place and looking at you with a mixture of admiration and terror. He has not yet learned that the most heroic thing about a knight's life is simply surviving it. Weapons practice begins. Sword, mace, axe, it makes a little difference. Every tool is heavy, every motion repetitive. The wooden dummies are splintered and patched, their stuffing leaking like the guts of some miserable animal. You swing, strike, recover, repeat. Sometimes you spar with other knights or with the squires who attack with all the subtlety of drunken goats. It is not about grace. It is about not letting your arms grow weak, not letting your reflexes dull. In a world where someone may try to kill you for a scrap of bread or a whispered insult, hesitation is just another way to die. Harder, barks the old master at arms, who has not been on a battlefield in a decade, but still has the lungs of a church bell. Faster! Keep your feet apart, or you will be kissing the dirt again. You want to tell him you would rather kiss the dirt than kiss the steel of another man's blade, but you do not. There are no jokes in training, not if you want to keep your teeth. Archery is next. The bow is unromantic, a tool, nothing more, and hard on your fingers. Your squire brings you a handful of arrows, half of them crooked from years of use. You shoot anyway. Sometimes you hit the target, sometimes you do not. The master at arms only sighs and mutters about how, in his day, arrows always flew straight and knights were not as soft as cheese. You ride too, because in theory, a knight without a horse is a knight without legs. In reality, most horses hate you. The practice field is churned into mud by hooves, and your own mount, more stubborn than brave, seems determined to throw you at every chance. You grip with your thighs until your bones ache, practicing charges and sudden stops, spinning your awkward lance until your arms burn. Your squire, always eager, is sent to retrieve you when you fall. You have fallen enough times to stop counting. Each time you hit the ground, the sky goes gray and the world shrinks to a narrow tunnel of pain. You get up. There is no other option. It is not only your body that must be trained. There is strategy, such as it is. wooden blocks set up on a table to represent men, horses, walls, and rivers. The Lord's steward runs you through imagined battles, talking endlessly about supply lines, ambushes, the importance of keeping your men sober enough to fight. You learn how to read a map, how to shout orders over the noise of panic, how to listen for the one piece of information that might mean the difference between a night in your own bed and a night with a sword in your ribs. There is, of course, wrestling, because sometimes, no matter how noble you are, a fight comes down to mud, fists, and teeth. You lock arms with another knight, both of you sweating and swearing, trying not to crack each other's ribs or bite through an ear. You learn that there is nothing dignified about two grown men rolling in the filth, that the only real winner is the one who gets up first and remembers not to limp. Your squire watches all of this, eyes wide, sometimes hopeful, sometimes afraid. You wonder if he will last long enough to learn the point of it all, that a knight trains not for glory, but for the moments when nothing else stands between him and oblivion. You do not tell him this, of course. Let him hold on to the dream a little longer. It will slip away soon enough. When training is finally over, you are not inspired, you are exhausted. You limp away, muscles trembling, bruises already blooming under your clothes. There is no applause, no grateful crowd, only the slow realization that you are slightly less likely to die horribly than you were yesterday. You wipe sweat from your brow, spit mud from your mouth, and hope that tomorrow will hurt a little less. In the distance, you hear the master at arms yelling at another unlucky soul. The cycle never stops. You go to wash, but the water is cold and the soap is sand. You check your wounds, bandage the worst, and remind yourself that this is as good as it gets. Training is not a path to greatness. It is a path to surviving long enough to regret your life decisions. But you will be back tomorrow. You always are. In the world of knights, the only victory is not dying for one more day. They say a knight is nothing without his horse. You wish this was just a poetic phrase. In truth, your mount is not a noble companion from legend, but a living, breathing liability, a heavy breathing, temperamental, hay devouring beast with hooves like hammers and a brain that appears, at times, to have been replaced with a rock. Nonetheless, you spend more waking hours with your horse than with any other soul. If the animal is in a foul mood, your day, sometimes your life, is in jeopardy. Today, as on every other day, your squire is struggling to bridle your charger. The horse, whose name changes with your mood, has a keen sense for fear and a deep hatred for anything resembling authority. The squire's hands shake, the horse's ears flatten. You step in before it becomes a brawl, grabbing the bridle and fixing the beast with a stare that says, "We are both trapped in this, so let us at least survive the day." The smell of horses is everywhere, in your hair, on your clothes, embedded in your skin. The stables are noisy and dark, lined with straw that is never quite clean, and the air is thick with a potent cocktail of ammonia, sweat, and manure. Your horse snorts, shifting its weight, testing your patience and the strength of your arms. This dance happens every morning. If you let your guard down, if you trust too easily, the horse will remind you of your mistake with a swift nip or a well aimed hoof. Grooming is not optional. A dirty horse grows sores under the saddle, limps into battle, and might throw you at the worst possible moment. You brush mud from its coat, detangle the mane, pick stones from the hooves, checking for cracks or signs of rot. Each step is necessary, each mistake potentially deadly. There is no romance here, only routine. The horse seems to resent your care, rolling its eyes and shuddering with every stroke. You talk to it, mostly to fill the silence. It does not answer, but you suspect it judges you all the same. When you saddle up, the true challenge begins. Lifting a saddle that weighs nearly as much as a child is its own trial, especially after a morning of training. The horse sidesteps, tail lashing, trying to knock the saddle from your grip or step on your toes. You learn to be quick, to expect betrayal at every turn. The girth is tightened, sometimes too much, sometimes not enough. Both are mistakes that end in pain. Mounted, the world changes. You are taller, faster, but also more exposed. The armor that weighs you down on the ground shifts uncomfortably as you move, pinching and digging in new places with every stride. Your horse feels your tension, and it responds with nervousness of its own. It remembers every fall you have taken, every sharp yank on the reins, every painful misstep. It holds grudges longer than some men. You ride out into the yard, your squire jogging behind, holding a spear and trying not to trip over his own feet. The yard is a chaos of movement. Knights practicing with lances, stable boys darting between hooves, chickens and dogs underfoot. One poorly timed kick, and your horse could send a squire flying or crush a small child. You have seen both happen, and you remember the screams. This is not the world of painted tapestries or illuminated manuscripts. This is reality: mud, danger, noise, and unpredictability. If your horse goes lame, you are stranded. If it spooks, you might find yourself tossed in the mud, armor weighing you down as you struggle to rise before someone or something finds you helpless. The battlefield is even worse. Horses are trained for war, yes, but no training can truly prepare them for the noise, the chaos, the smell of blood. You have watched mighty destriers bolt, trampling friend and foe alike. You have seen horses panic at the crash of a lance, refuse to cross a shallow stream, or collapse in a heap, bringing their riders down with them. Feeding and watering your horse is a never ending concern. Oats are expensive, hay is often moldy, and water is sometimes scarce. A sick horse means disaster, money lost, status diminished, survival threatened. When the animal catches a chill or eats something it should not, you watch helplessly as it sweats and shakes, praying it recovers. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does not. You do not have the luxury of mourning. Another horse will take its place, or you will ride to battle on foot and hope your legs last longer than your pride. Despite all this, there are rare moments of understanding, fleeting instances when you and your horse move as one, galloping across a field or charging into a tilt. In those moments, you remember why songs are sung about the bond between knight and steed. But the moment always passes, usually with a slip in the mud, a stumble, or a sharp reminder that in the end, you are only a man strapped to 1,000 pounds of muscle and unpredictable nerves. By day's end, you and your horse are both exhausted, each limping in your own way. You return to the stables, tend to the beast, and thank whatever gods you remember that you have survived another day together. The bond between you is not one of love or trust, but of necessity. And as you hobble away, the horse nickers softly, perhaps a farewell or perhaps a threat. You wonder sometimes if it dreams of freedom, just as you do. There is an enemy more relentless than any rival knight, more insidious than hunger, more certain than even taxes, time itself. You notice it most when you wake, your back creaking like the old doors of the chapel, your knees muttering curses that grow louder each year. No bard sings of a knight's aging joints, or the persistent ache that comes from years spent in iron and mud. But you are reminded of it every morning and with every move you make. As a squire, you barely notice the bruises and scrapes, the twisted ankles, the aching shoulders. They faded overnight, dismissed with a muttered prayer and a night's rest. But now, years later, your body keeps a ledger, and every injury is recorded in the tightness of a scar, the numbness of a finger, the way your left arm twinges every time it rains. Every fall from a horse, every blow taken in practice or battle, every night spent on damp straw has left a mark. You are your own first skeleton, haunted by the mistakes and wounds of your younger self. Some scars you wear proudly, the slash across your cheek, the broken nose, the missing tooth. These are badges of survival, proof you were there and fought and lived. But the others, the ones hidden under your tunic, the ones that throb in the night, these are less heroic. A hip that grinds with every step, ribs that never quite healed right, a thumb twisted forever to the side from a poorly blocked blow. You limp through the morning routines, armor feeling heavier than ever. The squires do not notice. They chatter about tournaments, about girls, about a world where pain is something temporary and glory eternal. You say nothing because one day they will learn, if they are lucky enough to survive that long. On bad days, the pain colors your mood. You snap at your squire for tying your greaves too tight, glare at the cook for burning your bread, curse the stable boys for not mucking out the stalls to your satisfaction. No one says anything to your face. They know that in this world, power can be measured by who you are allowed to shout at. There are other skeletons as well, the ghosts of the dead who follow you with silent, accusing eyes. Men you have killed, in fair fight or by dirty trick, it makes little difference. Their faces come back to you at night, unbidden, hovering just behind your eyelids as you try to sleep. Sometimes you remember their names. More often, you only recall the moment of impact, the shock in their eyes, the way the world went suddenly, irrevocably quiet. You tell yourself it was necessary. It is what nights do. But the dead are poor listeners, and they do not forgive. Every now and then, an old comrade passes through your lands, looking for shelter or just a familiar face. These meetings are awkward, filled with stories that skirt too close to shared failures, the wounds that will never fully close. You see in their faces a mirror of your own decline, the gray hair, the missing fingers, the stooped shoulders. You laugh together, but the laughter is brittle, edged with the knowledge that you are all living on borrowed time. If you are honest, you fear the day your body will finally betray you completely. One morning you will wake and find you cannot lift your sword, cannot mount your horse, cannot walk down the stairs without clutching the rail like a terrified child. You have seen what happens to knights who outlive their usefulness. The lucky ones become tutors, training the next generation in a trade that will chew them up just the same. The unlucky ones are left to rot in some drafty tower, or worse, are quietly shown the door when they can no longer serve. You try to prepare, taking fewer risks, trusting your armor more than your reflexes, keeping an eye on the young and eager faces that surround you. But there is no defense against the slow erosion of age, the steady nibbling of time. You watch as your world shrinks, the circle of what you can do growing smaller every season, your ambitions contracting along with it. And so you lean on your sword as you watch the squires train, knowing that they see you as both example and warning. You do not begrudge them their youth or their foolishness. You were once the same, but you wonder if any of them realize that the greatest enemy is not waiting on the battlefield or in the lists, but lurking in every bone, every memory, every morning when you wake and realize you are still alive and not quite whole. The past is always with you, clinging to your shadow, whispering that all your victories are temporary and all your wounds permanent. You carry your skeletons, literal and figurative, through every day. The armor hides much, but not everything. In the end, you know, time will have you, just as it has every night before, just as it will claim every squire after. The only choice you have left is how loudly you curse it and how long you can keep standing in spite of the weight. The helmet is both your shield and your cell. Every morning, as you brace yourself to slip it on, you know you are not just preparing for battle, you are stepping into a world where every breath is an effort and every thought is muffled by metal. No matter how often you polish it, how carefully you adjust the straps and the padded coif beneath, the helmet is never comfortable. It is heavy and unforgiving, pressing down on your skull as if to remind you just how fragile you really are beneath all the armor and bravado. As the weight settles, your vision narrows. The visor reduces the world to a pair of narrow slits, one for each eye. You can see forward, barely, but everything else fades into shadow. Your hearing, too, changes. The world outside becomes distant, voices distorted and echoing, the clatter of hooves and the shouts of men blending together into a dull roar. Your own breathing grows loud and strange, like a beast caged within your head. The air inside the helmet is stale, tinged with the coppery smell of old sweat and the faint rust that no amount of oil can completely banish. It is not just your senses that dull beneath the helmet. Thoughts move more slowly, memories grow foggy, and what little optimism you might have clung to is quickly suffocated. You try to remember the last time you wore the helmet for anything other than war or tournament, and you realize with a jolt that you have no memory at all of ever feeling safe without it. The helmet is the mark of your trade, the symbol of your status, and the prison you carry everywhere you go. You step onto the practice yard, the helmet's familiar weight, making your neck ache within minutes. The world becomes a strange place. Sounds come at you sideways. Shapes drift through the edges of your vision, and you are constantly forced to turn your whole body just to keep track of what is happening. You are vulnerable in ways you never imagined as a child, swinging wooden swords with the helmet your father's squire carried for you. Now you wear your own, battered and scarred, its dents telling stories you would rather forget. The master at arms yells instructions, but his voice is muffled, transformed into a jumble of vowels and harsh consonants. You nod and swing your sword, more out of habit than understanding. In the chaos of the practice yard, you see other knights struggling with their own helmets, all of you moving like marionettes with tangled strings. Occasionally, a squire will stagger, tripping over his own feet, his vision too clouded by the helmet to see where he is going. Sometimes he falls, sometimes he gets back up, sometimes he does not. Battle is worse. On the field, the helmet is all that stands between your face and an enemy's blade, but it is also the thing that might get you killed. You have seen men die because they could not see a blow coming, could not hear the call of retreat, could not breathe fast enough to keep pace with the madness around them. You have seen men rip their helmets off in panic, only to fall moments later with a crossbow bolt in the eye or a mace smashing their jaw to powder. You understand why they did it, and you know you might one day do the same. You remember your first real battle, how the world shrank to the tunnel of your visor, how you lost all sense of direction and nearly trampled your own men. The fog in your mind was as thick as the smoke from burning fields, your thoughts choked by fear and adrenaline. You learned to move through the haze, to trust your training and ignore the voice that screamed at you to tear the helmet off and run. You learned that the only way to survive was to accept the fog, to let it numb the fear and pain, and keep moving, one heavy step at a time. After the fight, removing the helmet is a small, sacred ritual. You fumble with the straps, your fingers clumsy, your head throbbing. The world explodes into light and sound and air, and you gasp as if you have been reborn. The sweat runs down your face, and you blink, trying to remember your own name. For a moment, you are just a person again, battered and bruised but alive. But the relief is always brief. The helmet waits, silent and patient, knowing you will return to it soon enough. You dream sometimes of walking without it, of feeling the sun on your scalp and the wind on your face, but these are dreams only. The helmet is part of you now, as inescapable as your own shadow. In the evenings, you line your helmet up with the others in the armory, each one scarred and unique. You wonder how many more times you will put it on, how many more mornings you will face the weight and the fog. You do not dwell on it. There is no point. Tomorrow will come, and you will don the helmet again, and the world will shrink to the width of two narrow slits, and you will stumble forward through the fog, hoping, as always, simply to survive. Victory in the stories is supposed to bring triumph, riches, and a place at the high table. But you know the truth. The end of a battle is the beginning of another ordeal, one of filth, fear, and the dull, grinding labor of survival. The field, when the dust settles and the banners droop, is not a scene of glory. It is a graveyard, and you are its looter. You stand amid the carnage, the aftermath as heavy as the sword still trembling in your grip. Bodies are everywhere, some sprawled where they fell, others piled like broken dolls, limbs at impossible angles. The smell hits you before you even begin your grisly work, a mix of blood, sweat, manure, torn earth, and something deeper, older. Death, you decide, smells like iron and rot, and secrets you are never meant to know. You are not alone. Other knights, squires, and men at arms pick their way through the debris, eyes trained for anything of value. Armor, weapons, boots, whatever has not been smashed or stripped already. You are careful. The field is never entirely safe. The wounded lie hidden, sometimes feigning death, desperate enough to strike a looter with a rock, a dagger, a handful of mud. You prod with your foot, wary, prepared to deliver mercy or a killing blow. The line between the two is blurred and often ignored. Your squire follows, carrying a battered sack. He is pale, his mouth a thin line, eyes wide, as he witnesses his first battlefield's silent harvest. You want to tell him to look away, but you know that to be a lie. He must learn, as you learned, that what comes after the charge is the slow, ugly process of gathering what the dead no longer need. You explain in a low voice what to look for: belts of good leather, buckles that can be melted down, daggers still sharp. The best swords are often broken, their hilts wrenched from cold fingers. If you are lucky, you find a few silver coins sewn into a doublet or hidden in a boot. Occasionally, there are trophies more personal: rings, pendants, a scrap of cloth embroidered with a lover's initials. You take them not because you want to, but because in this world, nothing is wasted. Even a bit of silk can buy food, can be traded for a night's shelter. In the rare, unlucky moment, you find someone you know, a neighbor, a man whose name you once toasted, a rival you never hated quite enough to wish dead. You pause, just long enough to wonder what will become of you when your time comes. Then you move on. The other looters work quickly. The crows are faster still, descending in a black, cawing tide. You shoo them off, sometimes with a shout, sometimes with a stone, knowing they will be back as soon as your back is turned. There is no dignity here. The bodies are stripped, searched, rolled over, and left for the scavengers. Even the Lord's heraldic surcoat is not safe from the knife. A scrap of good cloth is worth more than honor now. There are moments when the enormity of it all threatens to crush you. You find a child, just a boy, really, his face frozen in terror, his hand still clutching a splintered stick that once was a spear. You take his belt because it is better leather than yours. You close his eyes because you cannot bear to leave them open. You do not look for meaning. You do not pray. You do not have the strength. When your sack is full and your hands are numb, you stagger back to camp. The spoils are laid out for inspection. Some will go to your Lord, as is the law. Some will be kept for your own needs, hidden away, or traded on the quiet. You know what to expect. The steward's greedy eyes, the sneering envy of poorer knights, the hollow thanks of a squire who wishes for a world without this work. You say nothing. You have learned that the only reward for honesty is an empty purse. At night, by the meager fire, you turn the trophies over in your hands. A dagger with a jewel in the hilt, a ring that fits no finger of yours, a broken cross, cold and slick. You remember the faces of those who wore these things, wonder about the lives they lost, the hopes that died with them. You think about how one day your own belongings will be picked over, weighed and measured, your story reduced to what can be sold or bartered. There is no victory in this, only a relentless need to survive, to gather what you can and make it last until the next battle. You are not a hero here. You are a scavenger, a crow in steel, feasting on the remains of other men's dreams. When the fire burns low, you close your eyes and pray for dreamless sleep. You know tomorrow will bring more fields, more bodies, more trophies. The harvest never ends. You have survived the day's chaos, the clamor of swords, the relentless hunger of your enemies and your own. As dusk falls and the camp settles into uneasy silence, you are told, perhaps, that this is your time to rest. The battle is over, the dead are counted, and for a few brief hours you are not expected to fight, to command, to carry the world on your battered shoulders. But rest is a rare and slippery thing, one that evades you as skillfully as any living foe. You return to your allotted corner of the camp, little more than a threadbare blanket on cold, stony ground. Your squire, anxious to please, has done his best to find a spot away from the worst of the mud, but there is no true escape from filth. Mud is everywhere, on your boots, in your hair, caked under your fingernails, embedded so deep in your clothes that you have almost forgotten what clean feels like. You sink down, every bone aching, and pull the blanket around you as if it might protect you from the chill creeping in from the dark. Around the camp, other men settle in for the night, their voices muffled and exhausted. There is no singing, no laughter, only the occasional curse or the stifled sob of someone remembering what has been lost. Even the fire, struggling against damp wood, gives a little warmth or comfort. The air smells of wet wool, cold ashes, sweat, and fear. Somewhere nearby, a horse snorts, restless and unhappy, echoing your own mood. You wonder, briefly, if you will ever sleep again. Food is passed around, a chunk of hard cheese, a bit of salt pork, a crust of bread that chips another tooth. You eat in silence, counting each swallow, willing your body to make the best of whatever scraps you can claim. If you are lucky, someone has managed to scavenge a pot of thin stew, flavored more with old bones than with meat. The taste hardly matters. Hunger is a pain all its own, dulled only by the prospect that tomorrow you might have less. Your squire fusses over your armor, scraping mud from the joints and laying out what little gear you own to dry by the dying fire. You are grateful for the help, but you say nothing. Words are a luxury tonight, and you save them for when they are needed most. Instead, you close your eyes and try to let the weariness pull you under, away from the nagging ache in your ribs, the pounding in your skull, the thousand small wounds that bloom across your body like a garden of thorns. Sleep, if it comes, is a patchwork of shallow dreams and deeper worries. You lie half awake, listening to the soft snores and shifting bodies all around you. Each sound is a threat and a comfort, proof that you are not alone, but also a reminder that safety is never certain. You dream of home, but even in your dreams, the roof leaks and the bed is lumpy. You remember faces, some alive, some dead, some belonging to men you have killed or lost or failed. They come and go, silent judges in the courtroom of your mind. Sometimes rest is interrupted by shouts in the night. Bandits, wild dogs, a horse breaking loose, anything can shatter the fragile peace. You wake with your hand already gripping a weapon, your mind fogged with sleep, but your instincts sharp as ever. You are ready to fight, to flee, to do whatever is necessary. After, when the danger passes or proves to be nothing at all, you lie back down, but sleep is harder to find. If dawn comes, and it always does in the end, you are never refreshed. Your joints are stiffer, your wounds ache anew, and your stomach grumbles its familiar complaint. You wonder if you are any better off than the dead you stepped over on the battlefield. You rise because you must, because there is no other choice. The day will bring new orders, new troubles, another test of your strength and your patience. Your squire hands you a cup of water, lukewarm and tasting faintly of old leather, and you drink it like a man dying of thirst. As you shake off the night's chill and ready yourself for the next ordeal, you think about the lie of rest. There are no true pauses, not for men like you. Every night is only a brief and fitful retreat, a truce with exhaustion that you know you will lose in the end. Your dreams, such as they are, offer no comfort, only reminders of battles past and the ones still to come. You do not envy those who sleep deeply, those who can shut out the world for a few hours and wake feeling whole. You know too much to believe in such magic. The best you can hope for is to make it through the night with your sword close at hand and your wits intact. In the morning, you will rise again, another day older, another night more tired, but still breathing. And in this world, that is victory enough. You once believed, perhaps as a child or a fresh faced squire, that filth was a temporary state. Dirt was something that could be washed away, a sign of a hard day's work, a badge of effort that would vanish with a splash of clean water. Now you know better. Dirt is not a visitor in the life of a knight. It is your oldest, most loyal companion, a presence as constant as the ache in your joints or the weight of your sword. It starts the moment you wake, the gritty taste of dust on your tongue, the roughness under your nails, the streaks on your face that no amount of scrubbing can truly erase. You splash your hands and face with water from a battered bucket, watching the brown swirls vanish into the trampled earth. But the relief is brief and illusory. The dirt is in your pores, under your hair, rubbed raw into the skin beneath your armor. It will not leave, no matter how many times you curse it or try to scrape it away. Every article of clothing you own, from your tunic to your hose, is stained and stiff. The linen once belonged to another color, but now everything has settled into a universal, ambiguous shade of earth. You remember, distantly, what it felt like to wear something truly clean, soft fabric, the faint scent of lavender or lye, the promise of comfort. Now, even your best clothes itch with the memory of 100 nights spent on the ground, of blood and sweat and rain soaked so deeply that even the strongest soap, when you can find it, barely makes a difference. Your armor is no better. It collects grime in every seam and rivet, mud caked onto the greaves, rust blossoming in spots where the oil runs thin. Polishing is a daily battle, one you never truly win. Your squire, ever hopeful, attacks the worst of it with a rag and elbow grease, but the filth always comes back, as inevitable as the morning sun. Sometimes you wonder why you bother at all, until the day your buckle seizes up with rust in the middle of a skirmish, and you curse yourself for your laziness. Dirt is not just a nuisance, it is a threat. An untreated cut can fester, swelling and reddening, the dirt working its way in until pain becomes fever, and fever becomes a threat to your life. You have watched men die from nothing more than a scratch, a broken blister, a boil gone bad. The priest will tell you it is God's will. You know it is simply the price of living in a world where clean water is rare and hot water even rarer. Food brings no relief. The bread is flecked with dust from the oven's floor, the cheese wrapped in a cloth stiff with age and dirt. You eat with your hands, everyone does, sometimes pausing to wipe them on your tunic, which only makes things worse. No matter how careful you are, a gritty crunch in your teeth reminds you that the world is made of dirt and you are swallowing your share. At night, the dirt follows you to bed. Your blanket is never really dry, and you wake to find yourself matted with sweat and mud. Fleas are your constant bedfellows, and every itch, every bite, every wriggling sensation beneath your skin is a reminder that filth breeds not just discomfort, but a whole kingdom of pests. You scratch until you bleed, and then you worry about the dirt getting into the wound. Sometimes, when exhaustion wins out over irritation, you manage to fall asleep anyway. Even your mind cannot escape. Dirt invades your dreams. Fields choked with mud, rivers the color of blood, hands stained and unclean, no matter how much you scrub. You try not to think about what lives in the water, what festers beneath the surface, what crawls in the hayloft where you sometimes sleep. If you are lucky, the dirt is only in your dreams. If you are unlucky, you wake to find a rash blooming on your thigh, or a sore on your lip, or worse. You envy the birds sometimes, the way they shake off dust and fly away, but you are bound to the earth, as rooted as the oaks in the yard, as tethered to mud as any pig or ox. When rain comes, it only deepens the filth, turning roads into rivers and yards into bogs. Your boots fill with water, your feet chafe and blister, and your spirit, already heavy, sinks a little further. In this world, you learn to stop fighting the dirt. It is not your enemy, merely a fact of existence, as certain as death or taxes or disappointment. You stop apologizing for it. Stop pretending that you can rise above it. Instead, you make peace. You let the dirt harden the skin on your hands, fill in the cracks on your feet, roughen your voice. You are a knight, yes, but you are also a creature of earth, marked by every step you take. When you finally sleep, if you sleep at all, you curl into the dirt, as if hoping it will swallow you whole and let you rest for once without dreams. You do not wish for a world without filth, only for one where it does not feel quite so heavy. You keep track of the days when you do not see blood. It is a small, private ritual, almost like superstition. Most days, you lose count by breakfast, a nick shaving with a dull knife, or a blister popping on your palm as you hoist your shield. Sometimes it is someone else's, a squire's blood from a split lip, a cook's from a knife that slipped while hacking at a joint of meat, a peasant's from the countless accidents that come with hunger and haste. But there are days, ever more rare as the years pass, when you make it to dusk without seeing so much as a smear. These are not days of peace. Do not fool yourself, but simply days when the violence is hidden, deferred, waiting for the sun to set before making its appearance. On such days, you almost forget the taste of iron at the back of your throat, almost remember the softness of childhood when a bloody nose was the worst disaster that could befall you. Today, you are almost lucky. The morning starts with chores instead of chaos. You oversee repairs to a sagging barn, argue with a stone-faced steward about missing grain, inspect a new foal in the stables. Your squire cuts his hand on a rusty nail, but the blood is minor, a bead, easily wiped away, not enough to count. For a while, it seems possible that you will finish the day untouched by red. You feel the difference. The air seems lighter, the light less harsh. Conversations, while still tense and terse, do not vibrate with the edge of imminent violence. Men work with their heads down, muttering about weather and taxes and how the world seems to be falling apart faster than they can patch it. You do not think about battles or raids or the last time you heard the scream of a man skewered by a spear. Instead, you notice small things: the way a breeze stirs dust in the yard, the clatter of chickens searching for scraps, the laughter of children who are still too young to know better. But it is always there, at the edge of your mind, the knowledge that this reprieve is temporary. You carry your weapons with you, even as you walk the perimeter of your fields. Your eyes scan the woods for the glint of steel or the flicker of a torch. Your hands flex, restless, as if expecting trouble with every heartbeat. You are never unarmed, never unready. A day without blood is not a day of relaxation, but of heightened vigilance. You know the cost of carelessness too well. At midday, you gather with other knights and men at arms to share a meal in the shade of a battered oak. Bread, cheese, and ale, little else. Someone makes a joke, something crude and simple, but it draws a few genuine laughs. You almost smile yourself. For a moment, the world feels safe enough for jokes. Then someone mentions bandits seen near the southern road, and the moment breaks. You finish your meal quickly, always aware of the edge of the knife, the crack in the armor, the weakness that waits to be exploited. In the afternoon, you tend to your horse, rubbing dirt from its hide, checking hooves for stones and cracks. The horse rolls its eye at you, impatient with the attention, but smart enough not to resist. You find yourself talking to the animal as if it might answer, as if it could understand the strange relief of a quiet day. The words are nonsense, but they help keep the silence at bay. Evening comes. You have not fought, not spilled blood, not even had to break up a drunken fight among the men. The closest you come to violence is sharpening your sword by the fire, the rhythmic scrape of the whetstone soothing in its predictability. Your squire sits nearby, eyes drooping with fatigue, hands wrapped in a cloth that is still mostly white. The fire crackles, casting shadows that remind you, always, of darker nights. Before bed, you walk the perimeter once more, breathing in the cool night air and trying not to think about tomorrow. The sky is scattered with stars, cold and distant, promising nothing but indifference. Somewhere, an owl calls. You envy its detachment, its ability to hunt and kill without ever worrying about the price. You return to your bedroll, knowing that your luck cannot hold, that soon enough blood will return, yours or someone else's, or perhaps both. You settle in, armor stacked nearby, sword within arm's reach. You count the day as a victory, a minor miracle. You do not sleep easily, no night ever does. But for a few hours, you rest knowing you have not added to the world's tally of pain. When morning comes, you will not expect such luck again. But for tonight at least, your hands are clean, and the memory of it will have to be enough. You spend your days shadowed by death, not the grand, dramatic death sung of by bards, but the slow, grinding, omnipresent sort that wears you down with every sunrise. It is the knowledge that seeps into your bones with the morning chill, that sits with you during every meal, that curls around your dreams when sleep finally comes. You have seen too much to believe that death comes only on the battlefield or that it chooses the brave. Here, death is not an event. It is a neighbor, familiar and mundane, lurking in the muddy tracks outside your door. It is easy, at first, to pretend that you are immune. When you were younger, you thought death was for others, for the peasants in the fields, for the criminals on the gallows, for the men who fell from their horses during a poorly timed charge. You walked through the carnage of your first real battle, numb with adrenaline, telling yourself that you were chosen, that your armor or your skill or the prayers whispered over your head would keep you safe. You even laughed at death sometimes, drunk with survival, mocking the old men who counted the names of the lost. That bravado never lasts. The years teach you that death is patient. It can wait. Sometimes it comes quickly. A sword in the ribs, a spear in the thigh, an arrow from the tree line. Those deaths are clean, at least. The suffering is brief, but more often, death comes slowly. A fever that burns through the camp, a wound that festers despite all the prayers and poultices, a cough that will not stop. You have watched men die by inches, their bodies growing smaller and weaker each day until they are nothing but shadows under a thin blanket. You remember their faces, not because you want to, but because you cannot help it. The boy squire who bled out on the road because no one could stop the bleeding. The old knight whose leg turned black after a splintered lance pierced his thigh. The woman in the village who died of a chill after tending to the sick, her family burying her under a heap of stones to keep the dogs away. Their deaths are not heroic. They do not inspire songs or earn a place on the rolls of the honored dead. They are simply what happens day after day to people who are too slow, too poor, or simply too unlucky. You have come close yourself. A fever that left you shivering and hallucinating, convinced you could see the future in the patterns of mold on your tent ceiling. A blow to the head that left you vomiting and unable to speak for days. The memory of lying helpless, your body betraying you, wondering if this was how your story would end, not with a clash of steel, but with a whimper, alone in the dark. You try not to think about it, but you cannot help yourself. Every ache, every cough, every shiver of cold makes you wonder if this is the beginning of the end. You check your wounds obsessively, sniff your food for signs of rot, eye your companions for the telltale flush of fever. You are vigilant, not because you are brave, but because you are afraid. You have learned that vigilance is all that separates you from the grave, at least for now. There is no time to mourn the dead, not truly. When someone dies, you dig a hole if the ground is soft enough, or pile rocks over their body Say a few hurried words and move on. The camp must be broken, the fields tended, the next battle prepared. Grief is a luxury, and you cannot afford it. You tell yourself that you will remember, that you will keep the dead alive in your thoughts, but the truth is that the living always need more from you than the dead ever will. At night, though, the dead return. In your dreams, you see their faces, sometimes accusing, sometimes grateful, always unforgettable. You wake in a cold sweat, heart pounding, unsure if you are glad to be alive or merely afraid of joining them. You try to pray, but the words are empty, lost somewhere between fear and fatigue. You do not fear death in the way you once did. You have seen enough to know that it is inevitable. Instead, you fear dying badly, alone, forgotten, unmourned, with nothing to show for your struggles but a few worn out possessions and a name that will vanish from memory before the grass grows over your grave. You hope, absurdly, for something more, a death with meaning, or at least with dignity, but you know better than to expect it. In the morning, you rise again. You shoulder your sword, strap on your armor, and prepare for another day of work, another day of watching and waiting. Death is patient. It will come when it is ready. Until then, you live as best you can, not because you are brave, but because you have no other choice. Sometimes, when the fire burns low and the camp grows quiet, you let yourself imagine home. Not the stone walls and drafty corridors of a lord's keep, not the lice ridden straw of a crowded barracks, but something softer, warmer. You think of the place you once called home, or maybe only the idea of it. A cottage at the edge of a wood, a hearth that never goes cold, the gentle clatter of a kitchen where someone you love hums an old tune. You dream of rest, of safety, of belonging. It is a lie, of course, but it is one you allow yourself. Everyone needs something to hope for, and hope, as you have learned, is as hard to come by as a clean shirt or a good night's sleep. In your daydreams, the road always leads home. The war ends, the Lord relents, your wounds heal, and you return to a place that welcomes you. The faces are friendly, the food is warm, and for once you can lay aside your sword and trust that no one will come for you in the night. The real home, if it ever existed, is far away. You left it years ago, traded it for iron and mud, for loyalty and duty, for a world where every sunrise is a roll of the dice. When you do return, on the rare occasions that duty allows, you find it smaller than you remembered, dimmer and colder. The hearth is cold, the fields are thin, the faces are older and harder than your memories allow. Those who remain look at you with a strange mixture of awe and suspicion. You are not quite one of them anymore. You are a guest in the place that built you. Children stare at your scars and armor, afraid and fascinated. The elders question you about distant lands and battles, but their interest is edged with caution. You sense their relief when you leave again, taking your stories and your trouble with you. You are too much a knight for the village, too much a peasant for the court. Your home is everywhere and nowhere, on the road, in the saddle, at the edge of a muddy campfire. When you sleep, the dreams come. Sometimes they are merciful, memories of childhood, of climbing trees or chasing geese, of mother's bread fresh from the oven, and the thick, rough hands of your father as he showed you how to sharpen a blade. More often, though, the dreams betray you. You see your home burning, hear the screams of those you failed to protect, feel the bitterness of exile in every footstep. You wake with tears on your cheeks or fists clenched in the dark, unable to remember whether you were the hero or the villain. You try to make a home wherever you can. A favorite cloak becomes your comfort on cold nights. A chipped cup, stolen from some long forgotten feast, is a reminder of quieter times. You carve a small token from wood or bone, something to hold in your hand when the world feels too sharp and cold. Your squire, younger and less jaded, talks of home as if it is a reward waiting at the end of all this. You do not have the heart to correct him. Sometimes, in rare moments of quiet, you find the beginnings of comfort, a kind word, a hot meal, the shared silence of men who know what you have endured. For a few heartbeats, you believe that home is not a place, but a feeling, something built from companionship, from shared suffering, from the knowledge that you are still alive. But always, the feeling slips away. The fire burns out. The laughter fades. The march resumes. Home becomes a mirage, a trick of the mind that shimmers on the horizon but never arrives. The harder you chase it, the further away it seems. You watch other men carve out a corner for themselves, build families, raise children, grow old in the same bed. You envy them, even as you know you would not trade your freedom or your scars for their certainty. You have seen too much, lost too much, become too much a creature of the road to belong anywhere for long. The truth is this: your life is a journey without arrival, a story without a final chapter. You move from place to place, camp to camp, battlefield to battlefield, always searching for something you cannot name. Home is not a destination, but a memory, a longing, a ghost that walks beside you in the dark. When dawn comes, you rise and pack your things, careful not to leave anything behind. The world waits, cold and wide and indifferent. You tell yourself that you will find your way home one day, but as you mount your horse and ride out beneath the gray sky, you know the truth. You are already as close to home as you will ever be, alone, armored, and moving forward into the unknown. You once believed in heroism. It is the first myth handed down to you, brighter and more seductive than any promise of riches or fame. You were told, as every squire is, that a knight lives and dies by honor, that heroism is the highest calling. You pictured it as something golden, banners flying, maidens cheering, the grateful hands of the rescued reaching out for yours. But life, you have discovered, is not a story written by poets. The truth of heroism is darker, lonelier, and etched with scars. In the songs, a hero stands alone against impossible odds. In reality, you stand alone because no one else wants to die for a cause they barely understand. When the fighting starts, there are no heroic poses, only fear, the stink of sweat and terror, the clumsy scramble to survive. You have fought in battles where the so called heroes screamed for their mothers, threw down their swords, begged for their lives. You have watched men, good men, run when they should have stood, and seen the brave die first, unremembered except by the scavengers picking their pockets. Heroism, as it exists in the world, is a lottery of circumstance. Sometimes you end up in the right place at the right moment. You swing your sword, and later someone calls you a hero because you happened to kill the right man or hold the line until reinforcements arrived. They sing your praises, but only because they need a story, something to distract from the filth, the hunger, the ceaseless fear. Tomorrow they will forget, or they will call someone else a hero, and the cycle will begin again. You know the truth. Most heroism is desperation. You fight because there is no other choice. You ride out because someone must. And you hope in your secret heart that today it will not be you who falls. The songs never tell of the shaking hands, the doubts that gnaw at your gut, the moments when you wish you could run and never look back. They do not sing about the bargains you make with yourself. If I survive this, I will be better. If I win, I will rest. If I die, perhaps it will mean something. After battle, when the songs are sung and the wounds are bound, you are left with the quiet truth. The cheers fade, the crowd disperses, and you are alone with your thoughts. You replay each moment, searching for something you did that could be called heroic. Most of the time, you remember only the chaos, the mud, the blood, the panic, the raw terror. You survived, that is all. If there was any heroism, it is hidden in the countless small decisions, the choice to help a wounded comrade, to share your last crust of bread, to stand guard in the rain while others sleep. You see how the myth endures. It comforts those who stay behind, those who must find meaning in the suffering, the loss. The bards and priests build monuments to the dead, recite their names, tell stories of their courage. But you know those names are just words, carved into wood or stone, soon forgotten or misremembered. True heroism is quieter, invisible. It is the daily act of surviving without losing what little of your soul you still recognize. The truth is that most nights, most people, are neither heroes nor villains. You are a man doing what you must, trying not to die, trying not to betray what small sense of rightness remains inside you. Some days you succeed, some days you fail. You tell yourself it is enough. Still, you cannot fully escape the myth. In the eyes of your squire, in the hopeful questions of children, in the proud smiles of those who know nothing of what you have seen, you are the hero. You do not correct them. Why take away what little comfort they have? Better they dream of heroes. Better they believe that courage can triumph that right can prevail. The lie is kinder than the truth. Sometimes, on cold, sleepless nights, you let yourself believe it too. You remember the stories you heard as a child, the moments when you were proud, the rare times when someone did the right thing, even when it cost them everything. You cling to these fragments, not because they are true, but because they are necessary. Without them, the world is only mud and pain and endless waiting. So you wear the title of hero as you wear your armor, heavy, dented, mostly for the benefit of others. You walk through the world knowing that heroism and truth rarely meet, that legends grow best in the dark spaces left by silence. In the end, you settle for something smaller than heroism and truer than legend. You try to be decent. You try when you can to make the right choice, even if no one ever sings about it. And that, in this world, is as close as you can come to being a hero. You tell yourself that someday all this will end. The battles, the marches, the endless tension of waiting for the next disaster. Surely there will come a time when the sword can be set aside and the armor hung up for good. You dream sometimes of a life after war, a life where your days are your own, where you do not wake at every sound or flinch at every shadow. But as the years drag on, this hope fades into a kind of bitter joke. Peace, you realize, is just another illusion, like honor, like heroism, like home. When you were younger, you believed the end of war would mean rest. Perhaps you would become a lord, tending to your fields and your people. Perhaps you would grow old in the company of friends, surrounded by laughter and stories that soften with age. You pictured yourself on a bench in the sun, a cup of wine in your hand, the clamor of weapons replaced by the gentle sounds of a world finally at ease. It is a fine dream. It is not your future. You have seen what becomes of nights when the wars sputter out or simply move elsewhere. Some try to return to a life they left behind, farming, trading, running an inn. They find the world has changed, and so have they. The fields are unfamiliar, the tools heavy in hands used to gripping a hilt. The quiet is not peace, but a gnawing void. They pace the edges of their land, jump at noises only they can hear, wake at night with the phantom weight of armor pressing down on their chest. Their families do not know what to say to them or how to welcome them back. The old bonds are frayed and brittle. Others drift from place to place, unable or unwilling to settle. They offer their sword to anyone who will pay: guards, mercenaries, the strong arm in some petty feud. The skills they spent a lifetime honing have no other use. Violence becomes a habit, a means of survival, a way to feel something in a world that has grown cold and indifferent. You have met these men in taverns and market squares, their eyes empty, their tempers short. They are quick to laugh, quicker to fight, always restless, always on the edge of being thrown out or locked up. A rare few, those with connections or a sliver of luck, find a place at court. There, they discover that the battles never really end. The weapons are words and secrets. The wounds are slower to heal, but just as deep. Ambition replaces brute force, and every meal is a contest of smiles and careful lies. The courts, with their silks and perfumes, are no less dangerous than the bloodiest battlefield. You have watched men rise on the favor of a prince, only to fall in a single night's intrigue. Some survive, most do not. But the greatest struggle is not in finding work or winning favor. It is in learning how to live with yourself when the fighting stops. You are shaped by war, your habits, your fears, the memories you cannot shake. The nightmares do not end with the peace treaty. You still wake in the dark, certain that death is coming, reaching for a sword that is not there. You flinch when a door slams, when a child cries, when the world grows too quiet. Sometimes the peace feels more threatening than any battle. You see the cost in others too. Wives and children tiptoe around the veterans, careful not to stir the anger that simmers just beneath the surface. Old comrades drink themselves numb or vanish into the woods, preferring solitude to the company of those who cannot understand. The priests speak of forgiveness and redemption, but their words wash over you like cold rain. You know what you have done. You know what you have seen. No amount of prayer will change that. And yet, you persist. You find small ways to carry on. A morning walk through dew soaked fields, a cup of weak ale with an old friend, a quiet hour spent mending your boots, the simple rhythm of needle and thread. These are not victories, but they are what remain. You tell yourself that you will adapt, that you will make peace with this new life, even as you know that some part of you will always be waiting for the next summons, the next campaign, the next chance to matter. The world moves on, wars end, and new wars begin. You become a story told to children, a faded name on a crumbling monument, a face in a dusty portrait. The armor rusts in the corner, the sword hangs unused, but the scars linger on your body, in your mind, in the way you watch the door at supper and keep your back to the wall. Life after war is possible, they say. You are still waiting to find out if it is true. For now you live day by day, making do with what you have, learning to be content with the silence and the slowness, and wondering if somewhere in the stillness you might find a kind of peace that does not feel like defeat. You have heard the stories. They are told in every village, whispered by the fire, painted on the walls of great halls. The legend of the knight, a figure shining in armor, sword aloft, riding to the rescue with a noble heart and clean hands. In the tales, the knight never grows old, never falters, never loses his way. His victories are glorious, his losses noble, his death a triumphant sacrifice. The legend is beautiful, it is also a lie. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of yourself reflected in a bucket of water or the dull gleam of your battered breastplate. The man staring back at you is not the knight of legend. His face is lined and weather-beaten, lips set in a grim line, eyes tired and wary. The hands are scarred, the nails broken, the nails perpetually rimmed with dirt. The hair is graying, the jaw often unshaven. There is nothing shading about you, nothing poetic. You are muscle and bone and old wounds, shaped more by the things you have survived than by the stories people tell. When you ride through a town, children sometimes stare with awe or even fear. Some try to touch your armor as if its power might rub off on them. A mother might push a little boy forward, whispering that one day he too might be a great knight. You want to laugh, or perhaps to weep. You want to tell them what the life is truly like, the hunger, the terror, the endless compromise between cruelty and mercy. You want to tell them that a true knight's victories are measured in scars, and that for every tale of glory, there are 10 of misery that no one will sing. But you do not break the spell. The legend is necessary. It is comfort for the hungry, hope for the frightened, a reason for the desperate to believe that there is something better, something braver somewhere in the world. Without the legend, perhaps the whole rotten structure would collapse under the weight of its own pain. So you let them believe. You give them a smile, a nod, a few words spoken in a voice more tired than noble. You have heard the ballads, the ones sung by minstrels who have never held a sword or spent a night shivering on cold stone. They sing of impossible loyalty, of battles won through sheer will, of monsters slain and wrongs set right. In these songs, a knight's heart is pure, his intentions unblemished, his reward certain and just. You remember a time when you believed these songs. Now, when the melody reaches your ears, you turn away. You cannot bear to listen to yourself as a fiction. The truth is, you have been forced to make choices no song will ever mention. You have left men to die so others might live. You have lied, stolen, bribed, even killed when you were not certain it was right. You have begged for mercy and given it only to regret it later. You have broken your own promises and swallowed your pride and done what you must to see the next sunrise. You have watched others do the same, and you have judged them for it, and then you have forgiven them because you have no right to do otherwise. Sometimes you meet another knight, one who believes in the legend, still unbroken, still dreaming. You see the hope in his eyes, the certainty in his words. You envy him for a moment, and then you pity him. You want to warn him of what is coming, to tell him that the stories are only stories, that no one is coming to save him if he falls. But you say nothing. The world will teach him, just as it taught you. The lessons are slow and brutal, and there is no song to soften them. At night, when the fires burn low, you remember the faces of those who believed in you. A mother, a brother, a friend, people who looked at you and saw a knight, not the frightened, angry, aching soul beneath the steel. You wish you could have been that person, even for a moment. Sometimes you dream that you are riding out into the dawn, unafraid, unstained, leaving nothing behind but hope. But then you wake, and the truth is waiting. The armor is heavy, the wounds are real, and the world remains as hard and indifferent as ever. The legend of the night is a beautiful lie, a mask you have worn for so long that it sometimes feels like your own skin. You keep wearing it for the sake of others, for the sake of the story, for the hope that one day someone might find a little light in all the darkness. You are not a legend. You are just a man who refused to fall, who bore the weight as best you could, who kept going even when you wanted to stop. The songs will never tell the truth, but as you look back on the long road, you realize that living with the lie is sometimes the bravest thing of all. You sit alone by the fire, the world reduced to shadows, and the faint scent of smoke clinging to your battered cloak. Your armor lies in a heap, its dents and scratches catching the firelight, each mark a story you would rather forget. Tomorrow, perhaps, you will ride out again, or perhaps you will be called to settle a quarrel over stolen chickens, or dig a ditch, or simply survive another day. But tonight, as the flames dance low, you are left with the question that has haunted you more persistently than any enemy sword. Are you a knight or simply a slave to your time? You remember when you believed you could choose. The songs promised glory, the priests promised purpose, the old tales promised meaning. If you did your duty, if you wore the armor, bore the pain, kept the code, you would become something more than just a man. But the world you live in is not made of tales. It is built from hunger and mud, from compromise and resignation, from 1,000 tiny surrenders that add up to a life. There is honor, you suppose, in endurance. You have survived everything this age could throw at you: war and plague, famine and betrayal, the slow grind of poverty, and the sharp, sudden violence of battle. You have learned to bear the disappointment of broken oaths, of friends lost to ambition or disease, of a body that refuses to heal as quickly as it once did. Survival, you realize, is its own kind of heroism, even if no one will ever sing of it. Yet, even as you cling to that thought, you wonder if you are anything more than a beast of burden, another cog in a machine that chews up men and spits out ghosts. Your days are spent in toil, training, fighting, repairing what is broken, patching what is rotten, always scraping for the next meal, the next moment of safety, the next fleeting illusion of rest. The world does not reward you for this. It barely acknowledges you at all. You are expected to give everything and ask nothing, to sacrifice without question, to serve until you can no longer stand. If you are a knight, it is because you have learned to live with these chains. You have found ways to carry your burdens, to laugh in the face of suffering, to take pride in small mercies, a loaf shared, a child protected, a moment of peace stolen from the chaos. You keep your word when you can. You forgive yourself when you cannot. You recognize that sometimes the greatest courage is not on the battlefield, but in rising each day to face a world that would rather see you kneel. The truth is, you are both. You are a knight by the standards of your age, a man who does what must be done, who stands where others flee, who carries the hopes and fears of those too weak to fight. But you are also a slave to your own expectations, to the demands of your lords, to the cold logic of survival. You are shackled by the hunger that gnaws your belly, by the fear that stalks your dreams, by the knowledge that your life, for all its hardship, is barely your own. You do not know what future generations will make of your kind. Will they remember the mud, the blood, the loneliness, or only the shining legends forged from your suffering? Will they see you as a hero or just another victim of a cruel and indifferent world? The songs will persist, of course. They always do. But you suspect the truth will be buried beneath the poetry. So you stoke the fire, stretch your aching limbs, and prepare for another night of half sleep, sword close at hand. You are not waiting for glory, nor for any reward. You are not hoping for a place in legend. You are only trying to make it through until morning, as you always have. If there is any wisdom left in you, it is this: greatness and misery are two sides of the same battered coin, flipped each day by hands you cannot see. Some days you are the knight, most days you are simply surviving, and in the end, perhaps, that is all anyone can claim. The fire burns low. Outside, the world is as cold and unforgiving as ever. You close your eyes, not with hope, but with the tired resignation of one who has seen too much and expects nothing more. Tomorrow will come, whether you wish it or not. You will rise, strap on your armor, and become what the age requires: knight, slave, or something in between. And if there is any justice in the world, let it be this: that someone, someday, will remember not just the shining legend, but the man who bore the weight of the age in silence and survived.